ID ring. He indicated, "All stop, hold tight," then scrambled around the wreck, carefully loosening the crust of charred sand and debris that had embraced it for the last 5 decades. He had a shiny trowel in his hand, and it took a while before he was satisfied that no damage would occur to the fragile infrastructure as it was extracted. He clambered up an aluminium ladder, a look of sheer delight on his face. He was as excited as Melanie about this recovery. Once clear of its damp grave, the wreck groaned as unfamiliar pressure bore on joints, bolts, and welding unused to movement for years. The pair from the IWM held their breath as it slowly rotated before emerging into the light. Once clear of the surface, Lucien skillfully panned what looked like the carcass of an ancient dragon over to a large white tarpaulin pegged out on the wind-blown surface of the beach. Lumps of wet sand fell, splattering loudly and making them both jump. Melanie recognized the faded outline of the white Hahn or cockerel, emblem of the 9th staffel of the aircraft's shattered nose. Down the side of the fuselage were the faint remains of the aircraft's identifier letters, and on the ragged tail assembly the stripes of several victory bars. Melanie's breath quickened as she realized the evidence was mounting up. Her heart pounded as the rusting frame was lowered. The man from the ministry leant forward as Melanie turned to give Lucien the biggest smile she could muster. Against all expectations, he'd managed the extraction without damaging her precious cargo. There was very little left of the aircraft's canopy. No struts, no perspex, not even the usual rear-facing MG-15 machine gun. Handled by the aircraft's Bordfunker, the radio man and air gunner, it was usually there to pack a nasty punch to any attacker approaching from the rear. Here, the Bordfunker in question was 21-year-old Gefreiter Rudi Wattmacher, who had jumped clear of the burning aircraft, landing in the dunes with burns and a shattered leg. He'd recovered and survived the war, going on to live in Leipzig as a cabinet maker, before finally succumbing to cancer the previous year at the age of 72. It was his testimony, recorded by the IWM, that had first indicated that the grave of his illustrious commander, Hauptmann Otto Werner, may not be in the depths of the English Channel, as had always been believed, but rather inland, here, amidst the grassy dunes within the perimeter of the ArcelorMittal steelworks west of Dunkirk. The watching group stood back as the structure was lowered onto the tarpaulin. Peering into the rear cockpit, Melanie could see the soft materials of the seat had been destroyed by a combination of fire and the passage of time. She noted the rectangular slot that usually encased the rear gunner's parachute was empty, suggesting it hadn't burned in situ. In other words, it had been used before the crash. Equally compelling was the debris in the forward cockpit. Whomever had flown here had not escaped, and there was a good chance of finding identifying evidence against the black sludge on the cockpit floor. Melanie picked through it gingerly with the medical forceps she had clipped onto her overalls. Any items of potential interest were carefully bagged and labelled for later inspection. Amongst them were charred material and leather, fragments that looked like damp sticks but were possibly bone, and then small white pebbles, which on closer inspection were definitely teeth. The police would now have to be involved. Melanie began to feel guilty about her ghoulish enthusiasm. Down the left side of the cockpit, she found a metal disc covered in cracked glass. She wiped it gently against the sleeve of her overalls, recognizing the remains of a wristwatch. The hands and hour pips had been lost to the flames, but within the recessed date panel, the number 27 was clearly visible. Her heart leapt at this new piece of tangible evidence. "Bloody hell, have a look at this, Bobby," she said, holding it up with a trembling hand. They both knew Gefreiter Rudi Wattmacher's aircraft was shot down on the 27th of July, 1940. Peering closely at the item in his palm, Bobby looked up with a beaming smile. "It's a match, Mel. It's a bloody match." Her curiosity piqued, Melanie began to rummage furiously. "Take it easy, Mel. We don't want to damage..."